How much does DIC pay? Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and earlier I posted a video that walked through the eligibility criteria for the Veteran Administration's Dependent Indemnity Compensation Program, or DIC. DIC is kind of a complicated topic. You can have different types of dependents, like spouses, children, or parents. And the eligibility criteria for a specific type of dependent, well, it has rules for the veteran, and it also has rules for that type of dependent. Like I say, it is a big topic, and the video is kind of long. So rather than make that video even longer, what I decided to do was leave out the discussion of compensation and save that for this video. To get started, remember that there are three types of dependents when it comes to DIC. You got spouses, children, and parents, and we're going to start with spouses. First, the rates are different depending on whether the veteran died before or after January 1st, 1993. And since that was over 30 years ago, I'm going to focus on veterans who died after. The monthly payment for a qualifying spouse is $1,653.07. It's just a fixed number that has absolutely nothing to do with anybody's disability percentages. But for surviving spouses, there are a whole bunch of additional amounts that can be added. There is the so-called 8-year provision, where the veteran had a VA disability rating of totally disabling for at least the last 8 years before their death, and the surviving spouse was married to the veteran for those same 8 years. That adds $351.02 to the monthly payments. Then, if the surviving spouse has their own disability, which requires help with daily activities like eating or bathing or dressing, then the spouse qualifies for so-called aid and attendance, which is another $409.53 per month. If the surviving spouse can't leave their home due to a disability, they also get the housebound allowance, which is $191.85 per month. Finally, if the surviving spouse has one or more children under the age of 18, they get 2 additional benefits. There's an additional $409.53 every month for each eligible child, and a transitional benefit, which they receive for the first 2 years after the veteran's death. Now, the important thing about this 2-year transitional benefit is that it only applies to a surviving spouse with at least one child under age 18, and it only applies while the youngest child is still under age 18. So, if a vet passed away with a wife and a 17-year-old, when the 17-year-old turned 18, both the benefit for the child and the transitional benefit would stop. Of course, if you're familiar with benefit programs like this, you know that there's usually a rule for children who are over the age of 18, but either full-time students or they have some sort of disability of their own. And that is the case here, where there's a surviving spouse who is eligible for DIC, an unmarried adult child of a veteran between the ages of 18 and 23 who's enrolled in a qualified school program. Well, that child can receive their own separate monthly payment of $346.95 every month. Or, if the adult child is over 18 but became permanently unable to support themselves before age 18, they can receive $697.96 every month, even if the surviving spouse is receiving benefits. But what happens when there is no surviving spouse? Well, what's a little bit annoying is that the VA approaches this situation entirely differently. First, they total up the number of children who are under age 18 or between 18 and 23 and enrolled in a VA-approved school program, plus any helpless children over the age of 18 who became permanently unable to support themselves before age 18. Then they apply that number to a table where the total benefit grows slightly slower with each additional child. For example, with the second child, the total benefit goes up by $502.04. But the sixth child only adds $342.86. And, by the way, the 10th and each additional child over the 10th adds $248.98. Finally, for each so-called helpless child over the age of 18, the VA adds $409.53 to the total monthly payment, and yes, that is less than if there was a surviving spouse. What's a little bit vague is who actually receives these payments, particularly when there's adult children involved, but I kind of assume that that's covered by policy somewhere. In the interest of time, I'm skipping over a lot of examples that the VA provides because, well, you can go down some pretty crazy rabbit holes. But if you have any questions, just shoot me a comment. Oh, and I need to clarify something before we move on to DIC payments for dependent parents. There are two programs that are similar to DIC in that they provide payments to the survivors of a veteran. One is the Department of Defense's Survivor Benefit Program, and the other is the VA's Survivor Pension. DIC does not currently interfere with the Survivor Benefit Program. There used to be an offset, but that was fully eliminated back in 2023. Today, survivors get the full benefits from both DIC and the Survivor Benefit Program. However, there is an interaction between DIC and the VA's Survivor Pension. Bottom line, you get compensation from the program that provides the largest payment, but you don't get compensation from both. Okay, now let's talk about DIC compensation for dependent parents. And right off the bat, this is entirely different than the compensation calculations we saw for spouses or children, because this one depends on the parent's income. Essentially, the VA totals up all the income that dependent parents receive between January and December of the year. That includes wages, salaries, investment payments, rental income, gifts, income from dependents who live with the parents, and even some retirement payments. The more that income adds up to, the less the VA is going to pay. The other factor that the VA considers is, I guess you'd call it the status of the parents. Essentially, there's three different situations where only one parent is alive, or if both parents are alive, the VA considers whether the eligible parent lives with the veteran's other parent or with a current spouse. Now, the VA provides some pretty complicated tables to calculate the exact benefit down to the dollar of a parent's income, but this chart shows you the estimated value of the benefits for each of the three scenarios we discussed. And you can see that each scenario starts out at a maximum level, like $819 or $560, and then that benefit decreases by 8 cents for each dollar of the parent's income. My real thought here is that in a lot of cases, the juice won't be worth the squeeze. I mean, if your dependent parent's annual income is above about $11,000, it just doesn't seem like it's worth doing the paperwork. And just because ain't nothing easy, there are two more additional points to consider when it comes to parental DIC. Number one, if the parents are eligible for aid in attendance, they receive an additional $445 a month. And number two, if the total annual payments are less than $228, well, then the VA makes payments less frequently than every month. In fact, if the total annual payment is less than $72, the VA only makes a single payment once a year. Dependent indemnity compensation is a nauseating mess. I would bet my left pinky that there is an eligible beneficiary out there who needs these benefits, but they will never get them because the bureaucratic hurdles, even to figure out that they're eligible, are just too high. I don't begin to know a realistic way to help people caught in this situation, but consider this. If you are an eligible vet who might qualify for DIC, consider doing like a little bit of prep work. Introduce your dependents to a VSO, maybe do a bit of preliminary paperwork, and put together a packet of important documents for this benefit. And I know, the standard advice in this situation is just keep everything. But I gotta tell you, a closet full of every sheet of paper that the government ever gave you, that's gonna be more of a problem to your dependents after you pass than a solution. Put together copies of high priority documents like your DD-214 and your claim letter in prominent places, and talk with your dependents about their importance and their use while there's still time.